What if the friendship everyone believed in wasn't the full story? What if the headlines, the PR statements, and the silence were all pieces of a much bigger puzzle? Today, we're breaking down the timeline, the media narrative, and the questions no one can ignore. Because once you see how this story unfolded, you may never look at celebrity friendships the same way again. The idea of longevity in Hollywood has always fascinated audiences because in an industry that constantly reinvents itself, the people who manage to stay relevant for years or even decades become symbols of success, stability, and influence. And when friendships between powerful celebrities appear to stand the test of time, they become almost mythical in the eyes of fans who see them as proof that fame does not always destroy personal connections, and that loyalty can survive in an environment built on competition, attention, and reinvention. And this is exactly why the friendship at the center of this unfolding story captured so much attention, because it seemed to represent everything people want to believe about long-lasting bonds in a world that often feels temporary and transactional. And for years, the image presented to the public was one of mutual admiration, shared milestones, and a sense of unity that extended beyond professional collaboration into personal life celebrations and public appearances. And fans watched social media posts, interviews, and public outings that reinforced the idea that this friendship was strong, genuine, and unshakable. And that sense of stability became part of the larger narrative surrounding both individuals as their careers continued to grow and evolve in parallel, creating the impression that their success stories were not only intertwined, but mutually supportive and inspiring. And this image of loyalty and shared success became even more compelling as both figures reached extraordinary levels of influence, because their friendship seemed to exist at the intersection of music, film, fashion, and global pop culture. And as their public personas expanded, so did the fascination with how they managed to maintain such a close connection, despite the pressures of global fame and constant public scrutiny. And for many observers, this friendship symbolized a rare kind of longevity, not just in career, but in personal relationships. And it became part of the larger conversation about what it takes to keep a good thing going in an industry where relationships often fade as quickly as they appear. And yet, the very qualities that made this bond so admired also made it especially vulnerable to public scrutiny, because when a friendship is celebrated at such a global scale, any hint of tension or change becomes a subject of intense curiosity and speculation. And this is exactly what began to happen as a legal dispute connected to a film project started to generate headlines and draw attention to behind-the-scenes dynamics that had never been publicly discussed before. And suddenly, what once seemed like a simple professional disagreement began to feel like a doorway into a much larger story about influence, power, and the hidden mechanics of the entertainment industry. And as details slowly emerged through media reports, legal filings, and commentary from various sources, the narrative began to shift from admiration to intrigue, and the public found itself trying to understand how a situation that initially appeared unrelated to a famous friendship could gradually pull that friendship into the spotlight and transform it into a central element of the unfolding drama. And what made this shift especially compelling was the sense that audiences were witnessing the collision of two worlds: the carefully curated public image of unwavering support and the unpredictable reality of legal conflict, where every statement, every timeline detail, and every reported conversation suddenly carried new significance. And as the media cycle accelerated, headlines began to focus not only on the legal case itself, but on the potential ripple effects for the people connected to it. And this shift in focus created an atmosphere of suspense, where every new article felt like a piece of a larger puzzle, and every reported quote raised new questions about what had actually happened behind closed doors, and whether the public had ever truly understood the full story of the relationships involved. And as this sense of uncertainty grew, it became clear that the story was evolving into something far more complex than a simple dispute, because it now touched on themes that resonate deeply with audiences, including trust, loyalty, image management, and the pressures of maintaining a global brand while navigating private challenges. And this broader context helped explain why interest in the story continued to grow rather than fade, because it tapped into a universal curiosity about what happens when private friendships intersect with public controversies, and how the people at the center of those stories respond when their personal lives become part of a global conversation. And the more the narrative unfolded, the more it revealed about the intricate balance between authenticity and image in modern celebrity culture, where every decision can influence public perception and every silence can become a statement in itself. And this growing awareness transformed the story into a reflection of the entertainment industry as a whole, highlighting how public relations strategies, media narratives, and audience expectations interact in ways that shape the way stories are told and understood. And as audiences continued to follow each new development, the sense of anticipation only intensified, because it felt as though the full picture had yet to emerge, and that the next chapter could change everything once again. And in this way, the story of longevity, friendship, and public image became a suspenseful journey that captured the attention of viewers who wanted to understand not only what happened, but what it meant for the future of the relationships and reputations involved, and how the lessons learned from this moment might influence the way celebrity culture evolves in the years to come. As the timeline continued to unfold, the story began to move from admiration and curiosity into a far more complex territory, where questions about timing, communication, and perception started to dominate the conversation. And what once appeared to be a straightforward professional collaboration gradually transformed into a narrative filled with uncertainty, interpretation, and speculation. Because reports began suggesting that a meeting, originally intended to be informal, may have overlapped with professional discussions, creating confusion about who expected what and when. And this detail might have remained minor if not for the way it became central to the evolving public narrative, since the idea that someone might have entered a situation without full awareness immediately introduced themes of misunderstanding and unintended involvement. And these themes quickly became the foundation for countless discussions online, where audiences tried to piece together the sequence of events and determine whether the situation was the result of coincidence, miscommunication, or strategic planning. And while no single explanation was ever confirmed publicly, the presence of multiple interpretations created a sense of suspense that kept attention fixed on every new report, every new quote, and every new perspective offered by commentators and journalists. And as this process continued, statements attributed to representatives emphasized feelings of surprise, distance, and a desire to avoid becoming entangled in legal conflict, which further reinforced the idea that involvement may have been more limited than initially assumed. And yet, at the same time, conversations on social media began referencing private messages that appeared far more enthusiastic, supportive, and engaged than the public statements suggested, creating a striking contrast that became one of the most discussed elements of the entire story. Because audiences suddenly found themselves comparing two very different images, one that emphasized distance and discomfort, and another that seemed to show encouragement, collaboration, and shared excitement. And this contrast became the driving force behind the suspense, as viewers attempted to understand how both narratives could exist simultaneously, and whether the truth might lie somewhere in the middle, shaped by changing circumstances, evolving relationships, and the complex realities of crisis management in a world where public perception can shift in a matter of hours. And as days turned into weeks, the gap between official messaging and public interpretation seemed to widen rather than close. And this widening gap kept the story alive because it created an ongoing sense of anticipation that new information could emerge at any moment and reshape the narrative once again. And the role of media coverage in this process cannot be overlooked, because headlines often highlighted the most dramatic aspects of the situation, drawing attention to the emotional and relational implications rather than focusing solely on the legal details. And this emphasis on the human side of the story made it more relatable and more compelling to a global audience that was already deeply invested in the lives and careers of the individuals involved. And the more the story was discussed, the more it evolved into a broader conversation about how celebrity narratives are constructed, maintained, and sometimes challenged when unexpected developments occur. And throughout this process, the idea of public relations strategy remains a constant presence, as observers speculated about how statements were crafted, how information was shared, and how the timing of each message might influence public perception. And this awareness added another layer of intrigue, because it encouraged audiences to think not only about what was being said, but also about why it was being said, and how it might fit into a larger effort to manage a rapidly evolving situation. And the resulting atmosphere felt less like a single story with a clear beginning and end, and more like an unfolding series of chapters where each new development raised as many questions as it answered. And this sense of ongoing discovery ensured that interest never faded, because viewers felt that they were witnessing a narrative still in progress, one that could change direction at any moment and reveal new insights about the relationships and dynamics at its center. And in this way, the timeline itself became a source of suspense, as every date, every reported interaction, and every new detail was examined for clues about how the situation had evolved and what might happen next. And the longer the story continued, the clearer it became that the true focus had shifted from a single event to the broader themes of communication, trust, perception, and the challenges of navigating complex relationships under the constant scrutiny of global media. And as audiences continue to follow each new development, the sense of anticipation only grew stronger, because the possibility of a turning point always seemed just around the corner. And this ongoing tension between certainty and uncertainty became the defining feature of the narrative, keeping viewers engaged and invested as they waited to see how the story would continue to unfold and what new perspectives might emerge to reshape the way it was understood once again. As the conversation surrounding the situation continued to expand, it gradually moved beyond the immediate events and into a wider discussion about opportunity, access, and the way success is often shaped by environment, resources, and timing. And this shift in focus introduced a broader cultural dimension that resonated with audiences far beyond the original story, because it encouraged people to reflect on how the entertainment industry operates behind the scenes, and how the paths to success can look very different depending on circumstances and connections. And while these discussions remained opinions rather than proven facts, they became a significant part of the narrative, because they highlighted the contrast between the polished public image of fame and the complex realities that exist beneath the surface. And this contrast sparked debates about privilege, hard work, networking, and the unpredictable combination of factors that contribute to long-lasting careers. And as commentators explored these themes, the story began to feel less like a single controversy and more like a lens through which to examine the larger ecosystem of Hollywood, where relationships, collaborations, and reputations are constantly evolving, and where the pressure to maintain a consistent public image can be as demanding as the creative work itself. And this broader perspective added depth to the ongoing suspense, because it suggested that the events being discussed were not isolated, but connected to larger patterns and expectations within the entertainment world. And this realization encouraged audiences to consider how the pursuit of success and the maintenance of a global brand can create situations where personal and professional boundaries blur, and where decisions made in private can have far-reaching public consequences. And as these ideas gained traction, the role of storytelling itself became a central theme because observers began to notice how narratives are shaped by media coverage, public relations strategies, and audience interpretation, all interacting in real time to create a constantly evolving picture that can shift dramatically with the introduction of new information. And this awareness transformed the way many people engaged with the story, encouraging them to look beyond individual headlines and consider the broader context in which those headlines were created and shared. And as a result, the conversation became more reflective and analytical, focusing not only on what happened, but on how the story was being told and why certain elements captured public attention more strongly than others. And this shift toward a more thoughtful exploration of the narrative added another layer of intrigue, because it suggested that the true significance of the situation might lie not only in the details of the events themselves, but in the way those events revealed the inner workings of a global industry built on visibility, influence, and the careful management of public perception. And as this understanding deepened, the suspense remained strong because the story still felt unfinished, and the possibility of new developments continued to linger, creating a sense of anticipation that kept audiences engaged and eager to see how the narrative would evolve and what lessons might ultimately emerge from a moment that had already sparked such widespread discussion and reflection across the world. As the narrative reached its most intense phase, the focus shifted toward the emotional and personal dimensions of the situation and the possibility that private tensions may have grown behind the scenes as the public conversation continued to expand. And while no definitive statements confirmed the details, the absence of clear public responses became a powerful element of the story in its own right, because silence during moments of intense attention often invites interpretation, speculation, and endless discussion. And the longer the silence lasted, the more audiences searched for meaning in every small development, every new article, and every subtle change in public interactions. And this created an atmosphere where even ordinary events were examined for signs of distance or reconciliation, and where the lack of direct commentary allowed curiosity to fill the gaps with countless theories and interpretations. And this environment of uncertainty kept the suspense alive, because it felt as though the story was unfolding in real time without a clear resolution in sight. And as interest continued to grow, the narrative expanded beyond the individuals involved and began to highlight the broader challenges of maintaining friendships and professional relationships under the constant scrutiny of global audiences who expect transparency yet often receive carefully measured statements designed to protect privacy and reputation. And this tension between public curiosity and personal boundaries became one of the defining themes of the entire story, because it illustrated how fame can transform even the most private experiences into public conversations, and how the pressure to manage perception can shape the way people respond to difficult moments. And as the situation continued to evolve, the absence of closure became part of the intrigue, leaving audiences with the sense that the final chapter had not yet been written, and that the true impact of the events might only become clear with time and reflection. And this lingering uncertainty ensured that the story remains relevant and compelling, not because of definitive answers, but because of the questions it continued to raise about trust, communication, and the fragile balance between public image and private reality. In a world where every detail can become part of a global narrative, and where the search for understanding often becomes as compelling as the answers themselves. In the end, this unfolding story has become much bigger than a single moment or a single misunderstanding because it highlights how quickly narratives can change when private conversations meet public attention, and how the pressure of global fame can transform personal relationships into worldwide discussions almost overnight. And while many details remain unconfirmed, the situation has sparked a larger conversation about trust, perception, and the powerful role of public relations in shaping the stories audiences see and interpret. And it also reminds viewers that behind every headline are real people navigating complicated professional and personal challenges in an environment where every action can be amplified and analyzed by millions of people at once. And as the conversation continues, the most important takeaway may be the reminder to approach evolving stories with patience, balance, and an understanding that multiple perspectives can exist at the same time, because the full picture is rarely visible in a single moment, and often only becomes clearer as time passes and new information emerges. And regardless of how the story ultimately develops, its impact has already reshaped the way many people think about celebrity culture, media narratives, and the delicate balance between public image and private reality, leaving audiences watching closely for what happens next while recognizing that the final chapter has yet to be written.